curious.
I
we
think
were
wants
used
to
stand up.
reinstate
Are you going
what
to
is
stand
it
up there, or
that-
do you want this mic?
the tax where they used to come and look at like
Okay.
your jewelry and your silverware.
Just 10 seconds.
Okay,
Give it
sure.
right back.
Okay. Yeah, so give it right back because I need it.
You're so funny, you have no idea what you think of me.
I'd kind of like to see her in action. This is all she can do for that stuff.
Kurt, are you ready? Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Thea Perry. I'm the co-chair of the Voter Education Coalition, which is a nonpartisan community organization, volunteer, that works to provide educational opportunities for the public. If anybody has a question they'd like to ask, there are some cards over here. It looks like lots of them have already been picked up, which is fantastic. I will put some more out. But I'd also like to introduce Ann Gardner. She's our moderator today. Ann is the former editorial page editor of the Lawrence Journal World. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for being here. We're here today to talk about Proposition 1, the upcoming vote on the half-cent sales tax to fund expansion and renovation of the Douglas County Jail and development of a mental health crisis center. This forum originally was planned to include a presentation by county officials and discussion by representatives of local groups that support and oppose the sales tax question. But on Friday, representatives of Kansas Appleseed and Justice Matters informed VEC that they had decided that they would not participate. So after consultation with leaders of Citizens for a Better Douglas County, it was decided to change this event to a session with county officials who will make an educational presentation and then respond to questions that have been submitted to VEC and also by the audience members here. We'll take about 30 minutes for the presentation from the county people, and then about another 30 minutes for questions. The audience here in City Hall, as Thea said, are welcome to submit questions on cards that are available on that little table by the door, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. I mentioned to our other panel, our county people here, that we might, the more succinct you are with your answers, the more questions we'll get to, so we'll hopefully get to a lot of your questions. I'd also just like to remind the audience that it's our policy to ask people to be polite to the speakers and to refrain from applause or comments during the presentations and also during the question session. So thank you very much for that. We have with us today County Commissioner Nancy Thelman and Douglas County Undersheriff Gary Bunting, and they're going to tell us all about Proposition 1.
Thanks so much, Ann. And thanks to the Voter Education Coalition for this event. And I am honestly disappointed that some of the opposition groups opted not to participate in today's forum, but I give credit to you all for carrying on. My understanding is the opposition's concern is the county staying inside its educational lane, but let me assure you we are. All county materials published for the purpose of this election were first reviewed by County Council with just that education versus advocacy lens in mind. Any county flyers, website content, or other communication published for the purpose of this election has been reviewed by County Council and deemed educational only in content. I'd like to thank VEC for this opportunity to educate again about the county's proposed half-cent sales tax. That represents 50 cents on every $100 purchase. It will provide approximately $9.8 million to the county every year, more than half of which, almost 60%, will go toward the creation of a mental health crisis center and recovery campus with new countywide programs for mental health and drug addiction, and less than half of the sales tax, half-cent sales tax, almost 40%, will go toward the expansion of the county jail. There's no sunset on this tax, sunsetting being a way to make a tax temporary, because these are permanent problems that require permanent funding and ongoing generational solutions. Before we get to the bulk of the presentation, I'd like to provide some context to what has been a very long journey for this Douglas County Commission and the commission before it. More than 10 years ago, and with a very different set of commissioners, Sheriff Ken McGovern told the County Commission it needed to address overcrowding concerns at the county jail. That commission opted not to pursue expansion, but did approve funding to start a reentry program in an attempt to reduce the jail population by decreasing recidivism. A few years later, and with 3 new commissioners, the sheriff told the commission again of overcrowding issues at the jail. Again, this new commission opted not for expansion, but for increased funding for the reentry program. Again, to reduce the jail population by reducing recidivism. And about 5 years ago, Sheriff McGovern came to us again, a third time, with an urgent request to expand the jail. Despite our very low recidivism rate and despite long-standing reentry programs and some alternatives to incarceration, overcrowding at the jail had become untenable to the detriment of the safety and security, health, and well-being of inmates and staff. So with this third, most urgent request, this commission decided a jail expansion was finally necessary, and preliminary plans were begun. At about the same time, the County Commission decided also to address its mental health system, vastly underfunded for years by state government, to the detriment of many of our most vulnerable citizens. So we committed to work on mental health in addition to the jail. It was about that time that the Commission was invited by a then relatively new organization, Justice Matters, to travel with them to San Antonio, Texas, Bexar County, to tour what was then the fast becoming known as the nation's most impressive mental health crisis center. The Commission was impressed with Bexar County's work, and so the upshot of that visit was a decision to pursue a mental health crisis center for Douglas County. But that is not where the Bexar County story ends. What is not widely known is that shortly after that first trip to San Antonio, another team from Douglas County, including the sheriff and other county leaders, visited San Antonio a second time, not just to tour their mental health crisis center, but also to tour the Bexar County Jail. And what that second team saw troubled them greatly. They reported seeing reprehensible conditions for inmates at the county jail they visited, reprehensible particularly for inmates suffering with mental illness. The take-home lesson for us from that San Antonio trip, ×2, was that to focus on one facility, one population, to the neglect of the other was not a model we wanted to pursue. So over the years, the Douglas County Commission committed both to improving and expanding our county jail as one project and addressing gaps, including mental health crisis care, in a completely separate facility, not related to the jail, meant to serve the entire community. 2 separate projects, 2 separate locations, both aimed at improving the care and conditions of a broad array of people throughout the county. Moreover, the Commission was determined to think more broadly than just brick-and-mortar solutions to actually understanding and addressing programmatic needs, criminal justice reform, and unmet mental health needs and substance use disorder needs, impacting our entire county. So we formed a Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to advise us on new programs that would add to our efforts to safely reduce the population of our severely overcrowded jail. And alongside that, we formed a Health Leadership Council made up of all the CEOs of our leading health providing agencies to advise us on how best to collaboratively move forward with a better system-wide approach to caring for those among us with mental illness or addiction or both. That's all to say, in the last 4 years, this County Commission has learned a lot about these complicated issues. Our meetings have been held in public and our findings are available to the public. The point of that very long overview, trying to put this whole referendum into proper context, is that as a commission, we must focus on very local issues and conditions of our own Douglas County. We can learn from Bexar County, Texas, but we are not Bexar County, Texas. In the same vein, the opposition tells us we should be more like Iowa City in Johnson County, Iowa, who faced who, faced with a 30-year-old insufficient jail, put on the ballot not once but 3 times a proposal for a new jail. Each time the vote was over 50% for the new jail, but each time failed because the election threshold there was not majority, but supermajority, or 60%. Faced with an old and overcrowded jail, Johnson County, Iowa created a program to reduce their jail population with a rocket docket and had some significant success. Even so, according to their 2017 annual jail report, their jail is still over capacity and they still pay nearly $600,000 every year to house inmates out of county. Johnson County, Iowa, like Douglas County, Kansas, are both working hard to reduce their inmate populations. But that is where the comparison ends. While we have comparable-sized college towns in our borders, our surrounding populations are hardly comparable. The nearest major population center to Iowa City is 2 hours down the highway. Here in Douglas County, we are surrounded by dense population centers, nearly 200,000 people to our west and nearly 2.2 million people to our east. U.S. Census growth projections show that Shawnee County, Douglas County, and metropolitan Kansas City will grow as a region by a full 500,000 people in just the next 20 years. This population growth will have an undeniable impact on our county jail, since, on average, about 30% of our inmate population is made up of people who do not live here in Douglas County. Factual context, then, is important to take into consideration with this county referendum. We are not San Antonio. We are not Iowa City. We are not Oklahoma City or going farther back into opponent comparisons. We are also not Canada or Denmark or India or Pakistan. We are Douglas County, Kansas, committed to the very local issue of improving a 20-year-old public jail that no longer safely or sufficiently meets the needs of the population it is required to serve. Standards demanded by state statute, but also driven by a basic sense of human decency. Citizens have before them the opportunity to improve our county jail, create a mental health crisis and recovery campus in a totally different location than the jail, and begin to meet serious human needs, well vetted and with serious solutions, not just inside the jail, but for all of Lawrence, Eudora, Baldwin, Lecompton, and all 9 townships in between. With that long overview, I would invite Under Sheriff Gary Bunting for a more detailed presentation about the Douglas County Jail.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There we go.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be here. To kind of start off with, will be kind of an abbreviated version of our normal presentation. But I do have to start off explaining that we are a jail, not a prison. The sheriff of every county in Kansas is required by law to maintain a jail for the safekeeping of prisoners. We are a temporary detention facility meant to hold persons either during their pretrial phase or if they're sentenced for misdemeanor crimes, which can carry a punishment of up to a year. 99% of persons, if they're convicted and sentenced to an incarceration for a felony, will go to the Kansas Department of Corrections. So we are a temporary facility, and we are the only jail in Douglas County. To kind of start off with, how did we reach this point where we're having to ask the community to help us expand our facility? To kind of start off with, we typically book about 5,000 to 6,000 persons each year. Over half of those individuals are booked and bond out immediately. Years past, we were closer to 6,000. past couple of years, we've been closer to the 5,400 mark. We are seeing fewer people being arrested for lesser offenses, but many more people being arrested for serious offenses. Since 2014, we have seen a 101% increase in violent person crime as charged by the DA's office. These are crimes that tend to keep a person in custody longer because they're more complicated. A defendant facing a significant amount of time in prison obviously wants the best possible outcome in their case. So what we will often see is you will see defendants firing their attorneys when they are unhappy with them. A new attorney has to be appointed, and the process starts all over with the attorney having to learn the case from beginning to end. This is not a problem that is unique to Douglas County. This is something that's been affecting the regional area. Topeka, Wyandotte County, Johnson County all have seen increases in violent crime. Please, when you have the opportunity, go home and Google violent crime increase in Kansas. Next, when our jail was designed in the mid-1990s, we were actually projected to be over capacity by the year 2010. Commissioner Thellman talked about this, but we are a 186-bed facility. We are functionally full at 167. The reason is we operate off of a classification system that includes maximum, medium, and minimum security. Each of those environments is very different security-wise, and we have to have the ability to move people across classifications immediately if necessary. Our current facility was designed to be larger, but the county commission at that time cut pieces off to save costs. We are one of the fastest growing counties in the state. KU Center for Research has a study that shows that we're estimated to have a population of about 152,000 20 years from now. Our judicial system in Douglas County, they have the third highest caseload in the state. And here's the thing, the county has absolutely no control over our judicial system. We can't mandate how things operate. We cannot choose to simply fund another judge. The court system is completely managed and funded by the state. We have asked the state for additional judges. The state has given us 2 judges since 1982, about 1 every 18 years. The county has chosen to fund pro tem judges, which are limited duty judges, but they can only hear civil cases and first appearances, but it reduces that burden off of the other judges. But consider also that the judges, the DA's office, they have a responsibility to the safety of the community. They have to consider victims involved in crimes and public safety as well. Our court system in the state of Kansas is the lowest paid in the nation, and it's one of the lowest funded. The last point is we've been housing about 50 to 80 inmates out of county daily since 2015. These other counties all have specific requirements on who they will accept. So they will not take our behavior issues. They will only take our best behaved inmates. And they happen to be those inmates who are best affected by our reentry services. Our reentry program, to quite simplify it, provides cognitive behavioral therapy and case management services with the sole goal of reducing recidivism. When our program started, they established a baseline rate that 44% of our inmates recidivated, meaning they were rearrested within a year. At reentry's peak, they were able to get that down to 30%. Once we began housing all these inmates out of county, that number jumped to 45%, above levels where we were before the program even started. So we began our overcrowding situation, and the county commission wanted to look at ways that it could safely reduce our inmate population. They implemented several different programs. At any given time, we have approximately 150 people who are out of jail back into the community at no cost to the defendant, reducing socioeconomic barriers to being able to get out of jail. After implementing those programs, the county wanted to take a look at who do we have left in custody. This is a snapshot from March 5th. We had 214 inmates in custody. Our average has been around 226, so half the time we're above that number and half the time we're below it. This was a low count day for us. And 171 of our inmates are represented on the slide. And I would just like to point out a few things. Murder and attempted murder. We had 14 Douglas County defendants. We called Johnson County, Kansas a few weeks ago. They had 11. They are 4 to 5 times our size. We also have 14 maximum security cells. Look at the remaining persons on the slide. So what we've been forced to do is we take the best of maximum, move them to medium, the best of medium, move them to minimum, and we've been forced to live with a situation where we have violent persons housed together with nonviolent persons. Our environment is less safe for the inmates and less safe for the officers. I also have to point out, take a look at the distribution and possession of opiates and heroin. We had 32 persons in custody on this day. This was not a problem we had several years ago. Law enforcement corrections is very dynamic. We have to respond to new problems. So one of the things we're working on here is developing a new program to bring substance abuse counseling into our facility, being able to have funding for medications like Vivitrol, and then when a person's released, being able to transition them to our community partner DECA for additional services. There's this community discussion with the behavioral health campus that we need to be able to serve people where they are. You need to have preventative services to help prevent future problems. You need to have voluntary services to help those willing to seek help. Unfortunately, many of the people that we deal with at our facility are treatment resistant. They aren't ready to be helped. It's sad to see, to use opiates for example, a person will come in, detox, be released, and they're back out committing new crimes to be able to obtain money for drugs. Having had family history with mental illness and substance abuse and persons being in jail, persons refusing to get help, I understand the definite family pain that's associated with this and the uncertainty involved in knowing what somebody's outcome or end result is going to be. We have to be able to have the ability to help these persons as well. You can't force a person to change, but when they are ready and willing to change, you need to be able to have the tools available for them to be able to do so. We turned to the Vera Institute, a national organization focused on jail alternatives, to see how we stood compared to the rest of the nation. They're an organization that focuses on jail alternatives. They also keep national statistics. They actually recommend our reentry program as a model for the rest of the nation. They showed that we incarcerate 1.63 persons per 1,000 residents. That's equivalent to 163 persons per 1,000, and that was in 2014, their most recent complete data set. Their lowest point was 1.2 and their highest was 8.1. We have one of the lowest incarceration rates in the state and the nation. We are not contributing to the issue of mass incarceration. There is data out there right now that's showing our 216 rate is nearly 300. That is incorrect. We have never had a rate that high. Our rate for 2016 was 2.0 or 200 persons per 100,000. Our 2018 rate so far is 1.8, and we do not exclude the 30% of those residents who are out of county residents. What do we do for the people that we have to have in custody? We have Bert Nash in our facility since 2001. We have 4 full-time clinicians, 1 part-time APRN. Our reentry program offers 47 different programs weekly related to cognitive behavior, educational, substance abuse, and religion. We allow everyone wishing to participate in our program to do so, even though they may be going to prison and may not be eligible for case management. We had over 1,000 people receive some form of acute case management in 2017, and 2,000 participate in one or more of our programs. I'll just give you the opportunity to kind of read through these. I won't read them to you, but this is 2 slides representing the weekly programs we have. And I'll kind of talk a little bit and distract you, point a few things out. It's always pretty neat. Not every case is a success story. A person has to want to change. Providing these programs, we were doing this similar presentation a couple of weeks ago, and one of the students in the class was actually from a KU class, and the student asked, do you still have that program where you have the school district teacher in your building to help people earn diplomas? And of course our answer was yes. We have a full-time teacher. We average about 7 diplomas each year. And the people that start the program in the facility can continue it when they go back out into the community. We explain that, and she turns to the sheriff and she says, I was your first graduate and you gave me my diploma. Here's the second slide to that. So closing out here, our programs are nationally recognized. Our Assess, Identify, Divert program, focused on diverting women, veterans, and persons with serious mental illness from jail, is nationally recognized as a best practice site. 9 counties in the United States from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. We were recently recognized by the National Association of Counties, the American Psychiatric Association, and the Council for State Governments as an innovator county. One of only 8 counties in the United States is a model program for others, for persons to be able to, or local government entities to be able to obtain grant funds to be able to come to our county to learn about what we do. Reasons we need to expand. As you've seen through the crimes listed in the point in time count, our population has significantly changed. We have many more violent persons. We have violent persons mixed with nonviolent persons. We have seen a 113% increase in officer needs emergency assistance codes called since 2013. Instead of having an incident every 10 days, they now occur about every 4 days. Financial challenges. We pay $1.3 million each year between housing and transportation costs to house 50 to 80 persons out of county to counties that do not have the programs that we do. This is not a viable alternative. Stories like Johnson County, Kansas, who have 300 empty beds, are not common. They have 300 empty beds because they are 10 years into a 20-year expansion plan. We would have empty beds too, hopefully for a very long time. This is a very stressful situation for the inmates. We don't just take an inmate and keep them permanently in another county. We may take an inmate to Leavenworth County. 5 days later, we have to bring them back for court. Because we're bringing them back, we have to take another inmate there. The inmate goes to court, and maybe there's not room in Leavenworth County. Then we have to take that inmate to Chase County. This is extremely stressful on our inmate population. And they've come to learn that they've confided in some of our volunteers that they know that if they're a behavior problem, assault an officer, assault another inmate, they can avoid being housed out of county. So what do we hope to address with this expansion? And I do need to point out that Trainer Architects did not come to us and say, here's the facility you need and here's the number of beds you need. We assembled a team of 8 personnel who have a combined total of experience of about 160 years. We worked with a national expert to estimate our population 20 years from now. We then went to the architect, told them the bed space we needed, and we also sat down and helped with the design process, figuring out how each piece would best fit on the current facility. So what do we hope to address with this? We want to address our lack of space, necessary space for maximum, medium, and minimum male security. Women, when we opened our facility, we housed 6 to 8 women. We couldn't financially articulate building separate security units for them. We now house an average of about 40 women daily, and they're all in one 14-cell, 28-bed housing unit. We have violent offenders mixed with nonviolent offenders. We have women sleeping on cots on the floors in programs rooms and in laundry areas. Women do not have equal housing opportunities as the males, and they are in an unsafe environment or less safe environment. We need to fix this as well. Therapeutic Space. You've seen we try to divert as many persons with mental illness from jail as we can, but looking at the charges on those sheets, due to the severity of crimes, we are going to have persons with mental illness. We have Burt Nash in our facility. We provide medications, but what we do lack is a therapeutic space. So we would like to build special needs units for both males and females that include more daylight, green space, has multiple occupancy cells. And then lastly, our first priority is always safety and security. But the second commitment that we've made a strong commitment to is our reentry program, helping people correct the issues that are contributing to them being rearrested or coming back to jail. We want to be able to bring our inmates back to our facility so that we can better serve them and provide these services. Persons have asked to see photographs of persons in the programs room. This is a female housing unit, programs room on the left with 2 inmates. Their other programs room had 3 inmates. The laundry area that you see there on the right was unoccupied, but there's usually a second cot nearby there. The other problem we run into is when we occupy programs rooms with inmates, we run out of space to provide programs. This is our minimum housing unit. We had 4 inmates in this room at this time. In the end, we as an agency wish that we weren't having to ask the community for this. This has been a 4-year project, and it would be much easier not to have to deal with this as an issue. In the end, this is going to address our safety and security issues. This would make the environment safer for both the inmates and the officers. If you look at your list, a vast majority of those persons listed on that point in time count will be returning to the community at some point in time. Every single one of those persons is somebody's family member, friend, or future neighbor, and we're just trying to help return them to the community as responsible citizens. Thank you.
Thanks to both of you. Did you have something else, Nancy? Or okay. Quickly, we want to get to our questions.
As is always the case, there's much more to say than time allows. I need to speak briefly to the other side of the ballot question, which is the Mental Health Crisis Center and Recovery Campus. I'll just say for a detailed overview of that, I would ask folks to go to the county website and look at the material on that. But just briefly, this is a well-vetted, comprehensive plan for mental health and substance abuse care throughout Douglas County, endorsed and agreed to by Burt Nash, DECA, Heartland Health, Heartland RADAC, Lawrence Memorial Hospital, the Public Health Department, and the Douglas County Housing Authority. It provides a crisis center that is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It provides sobering, medication-assisted detox, and respite space under the roof of the crisis center. It also provides temporary supportive housing and permanent supportive housing, something which Douglas County very severely needs. It also supplies a 24-hour crisis line and a mobile response unit for those folks who find themselves in crisis, but who are not willing or able to leave their home, leave their space in the park or under the bridge or wherever they are, not able to leave their space and come to the crisis center. We will go to them. Additionally, outside of the brick and mortar solution, there are various programs and lots of attention to increased needs in terms of staffing, more psychiatry, more APRNs, behavioral health crisis counselors, social workers, and peer support, along with several programs that would address our need to better screen for suicide throughout the county and to help with mindfulness and recovery techniques is easily accessible as on your smartphone, which would be an app that the county would supply to everyone in this county at no cost. We would also host an opioid summit because we now know that our opioid prescription rate in this county is the highest in the state. We have millions of opioids sitting on our medicine, in our medicine cabinets, and many more out in the community. We have alcohol, meth, and heroin, and now addiction to opioid in our county, and we need to address those both proactively and aggressively. Lastly, we will add RAP counselors, professional behavioral health counselors, to the school systems in Eudora, Baldwin, and hopefully Lecompton. All of that being said, the Proposition 1, as we've proposed it, is the result of years of work on these complicated community needs. The half-cent sales tax we propose will provide a permanent funding stream that will assure advances in services and improvements to facilities that serve not just the jailed population, but also the broader population of Douglas County. This is an important moment of discernment for our community, and speaking for Douglas County, I can say that we appreciate the Voter Education Coalition's effort to advance citizen education with this forum. We also encourage citizens to weigh the costs and benefits of Proposition 1 to make their own well-informed decision. And for any questions or concerns, you can go to the county website or you can reach out to me. I'm having lots of cups of coffee with lots of people these days and lots of meetings around the county. Happy to do that till the very last. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a mountain of questions here, and even if we go over our time a few minutes, which I assume that we are able to do, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, we'll probably not get to all of them, but I'll do my best. One of my strategies is going to be to try to kind of combine a couple of questions if they are on similar topics. And the first one I'll take here is, what are the benefits of a sales tax over a property tax? And then related to that, even though we have the sales tax increase dedicated to this project, will we also need a property tax increase?
So is this, do I need to go to that mic or stay here? So the benefit of a sales tax over a mill levy increase or a property tax is that the sales tax actually allows us to get a revenue stream that comes not just from Douglas County residents, but from people who come here and spend their money here from outside of Douglas County. The reason that that makes sense to us is that we have within our jail about 30% inmates who come from other counties besides Douglas County, and so this helps spread the burden of that cost beyond Douglas County citizens. If we had chosen to go the property tax route, that would have represented fully an 11 mil increase or a 25% increase in citizens' property tax. And only about half of the citizens in Douglas County actually own property, so that's that's creating a burden, particularly on one segment of the population: homeowners, renters, business owners, and industry. So we opted for the sales tax. With the expansion of the jail, the county jail, when it is fully operational and fully staffed, so several years into its opening and operation, there will be small incremental increases in the Douglas County property tax to cover staffing and operations of that facility. We think up to about 3.8 mils. Again, not all at once, but in increments over years.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if I can get this one out. Given the increasing social and emotional needs of students in our schools, if the ballot initiative fails and community mental health resources have to be reallocated, how will the county address the decrease or elimination of support provided by Burt Nash?
All of that, the idea that there would be some cuts to social services has to be balanced with the idea that we would look through our entire budget to see where we would find savings. So wouldn't be limited to social services. We'd also have to look at our capital improvement plan, economic development, and various other ways that we spend money, some which are discretionary, some are not. So I think that it's reasonable to say we would try to gather up that $4.5 million if we have to pay cash for the first phase of the county jail. We would certainly do so, probably with some increase in the property tax, but also by looking into our own budget to see where our discretionary funds might be found. It'd be a tough call, and one that we hope not to have to make.
Gary, feel free to jump in anytime here if you have something.
She's doing a great
She's
job.
doing good. Okay, that's good.
Please, Gary, jump in.
This might be one for Gary, are there specific programs that Douglas County could implement that would prevent someone from getting arrested to begin with? Please be specific and identify a funding source.
The only thing immediately that would come to mind could be like preventative services, being able to prevent future issues from happening, but being able to estimate what type of impact that would have. Preventative services are a big portion of the behavioral health campus. We did look at how the behavioral health campus could help reduce our population, and that impact was minimal. Comparing us with other entities or communities that have crisis centers, our estimates are that we will only be able to reduce the number of people by about 2 per month. We normally book about 450 per month. As far as funding sources for such programs, I believe the commissioner is a better.
Well, the half-cent sales tax, again, would provide about 60% of that $9.8 million goes to the programmatic side, the crisis side, and our hope to help people, not just in crisis, but in the attempt to prevent crisis. So a lot of work, program, and staffing would be dedicated to the prevention side in our community, hoping to find kids, young adults, our students, and throughout the population, hoping to capture their attention and help them before they find themselves in trouble with the law. So that's part of the hope of this really substantial, systemic, comprehensive approach we're trying to take for the community.
Okay, this question is a little bit related, I guess. I have seen statistics that about the percentage of incarcerated persons of color is greater than the percentage of our population. How are we addressing this?
Yes, and if you look at your point in time count, the very back page shows data on that. We do have a disproportionate ratio of persons of color that are booked. Typically about 15 to 16% each year of our bookings are African Americans compared to a 4.6% population. About 6 to 7% are Native American residents. These are residents compared to residents, understanding that about 30% of our bookings are out-of-county residents. The county has made a commitment to investigating that through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. That process was unfortunately delayed because of the Lawrence Police Chief retiring. This has to be a complete effort where everyone has to be on board. They didn't want to start a project that the new chief was not going to be supportive of. Chief Burns is on board. They have began the study again. They are working with an expert out of Boston, and they're trying to develop what the contract might look like, funding sources, and things of that nature. It is an issue that I think everybody wants an answer on, and everybody wants to know how they can help. I believe this will very much be a community issue. As far as our ability, I believe our reentry program will be a portion of the solution. Unfortunately, until we fix this issue, our reentry program is not as effective as it could be.
Let me just add
Yeah,
to
go
that,
ahead.
besides Chief Burns, we also have, thanks to him and the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, we have the cooperation of the Eudora and Baldwin police chiefs and the chief up at the KU force. So it really is a county-wide effort in terms of the leadership of law enforcement.
Okay. This is probably more for the commissioner, and the question is, please explain the duties of the public relations firm the county hired and where the money comes from to pay them.
We don't have a public relations firm that we've hired. We did hire a communications consultant, Amy Jordan Wooden, and we don't have a public information officer, but we hope to. So part of her job early on was to help us begin to get ready for a full-time permanent staff person who would be a public information officer for us, because that takes a great amount of time as we get more and more requests for public information. That's a huge amount of valuable staff time. So we wanted to have someone who's expert at that and dedicated to that work. And then Amy Jordan Wooden was also asked to help us with our communication strategy for as we got into the difficult issue of sorting out how we talk about in a fair and accurate way this really complicated work we're doing, how we can communicate that to our community in an effective way.
And the source of the funding?
County
It's
dollars.
county funds,
Mhm.
okay, great. Okay, what is causing the increase in violence? And the question, over-policing, poverty, governance? Any thoughts?
What we seem to be seeing is there's a lot of meth-related crimes, opiate-related crimes. There's a lot of criminal activity, home invasions related to, I mean, even low-level amounts of marijuana or marijuana in general. It seems to be a lot of drug-related activity currently.
Okay. We have a lot of questions here that kind of are under the heading of, they start out, if the sales tax fails. So let's do a couple of those. If the sales tax fails, how do you propose we move forward on both issues, jail expansion and behavioral health campus, which includes mental health crisis center?
Well, if we have a failed referendum, the county has committed that it would move forward with phased expansion of the county jail, because we feel the need for more space is urgent. And so our architects lined out a multi-phase program that would take around 16 years to complete, phase by phase by phase.
How long?
16 years.
16, okay.
As opposed to the 3 years it would take to complete it with a successful referendum. So at every phase, we have calculated that we would need to gather up about $4.5 million of cash to build each phase on a pay-as-you-go basis. Alongside that $4.5 million, we would still be paying $1.3 million to house some of our inmates out of county. So altogether, it's a pretty expensive proposition should the referendum fail. So that's our hope, that we can get both the jail expansion debt funded and get all of the mental health brick and mortar, as well as about $5 million every year of money for staffing and new programming throughout the county. And
Is there any contingency plan for the mental health facilities? That question kind of
yeah.
included that.
Our obligation would be to prioritize the expansion of the jail. We would certainly do everything we could not to decrease funding to essential mental health programs that are already up and running. And we dedicated $1.9 million in this year's budget to really begin the work of this mental health crisis programming, some of which is already in play at Lawrence Memorial Hospital, some at DECA, some within the jail. We're already doing this work, and my hope is very much that we can continue at the pace we are.
A kind of a detail related to that question, somebody was wondering what the timeline was for initial construction, and also whether any public approval is going to be required to move forward on the jail expansion.
The public approval that is required for the jail expansion is whether it is debt-funded or whether it is a cash basis of funding. So the public approval that's needed is the one we're asking for now, which is to debt fund a 20-year bond to pay for the construction of the jail.
And this was like assuming that this vote fails and you have to move ahead without the sales tax, then what would the public approval requirement be in that case?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be. That we would be able to go ahead and move forward with the first phase expansion of the jail. Although certainly that program, the prioritization of exactly, what part of the jail would be expanded first, all of that is yet to be determined. We are hopeful that those hard decisions don't have to be made, that it can be built all in one grand effort. It's a really complicated building, especially since it has to be operated as a safe and secure jail while construction is underway. So our hope is to get it all done all at once, rather than over a 16-year period of time.
Okay. I have 2 or 3 questions here that are kind of related to services that would be offered at the crisis center, and I don't know for sure if you can address those, but I'll throw them out and we'll see what you can tell us. One is, what kind of sex offender treatment would be offered to children, youth, and adults arrested for sex offenses? And also, the state of Kansas has the highest rate of treating and overprescribing drugs and psychotropics to elderly with mental health and dementia. How do we safeguard against our jail population being over-medicated? So sexual offenders and then drug treatment.
I can't really speak specifically to any percentages around sex offenders because I'm just not well-versed in that particular angle of this, but I can speak to the concern that we have around prescription of narcotics and opiates, and in this community, we do have in our jail we have the oversight of a physician, as well as 4 professionals from Burt Nash who are there throughout the day to oversee folks who are in a unit where folks with medication are helped and observed for their mental health needs. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of lost in that question.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I think you've probably answered it as well as you can, that just what kind of sexual offender treatment would be envisioned at the crisis center.
The crisis center is really meant for anyone who walks in the door, either a public-facing door or a door that the police or sheriff or law enforcement might bring someone to a discreet side door. And whoever they bring is someone that will be triaged, will be evaluated either in that stabilization unit or the sobering or detox unit. So, if someone who has been through some kind of sexual trauma walks through that door, they will be welcomed and evaluated on the spot. But in terms of any detailed knowledge of
how about the behavioral health center? Is there any provision specifically for sex offense treatment
at the crisis center?
No, at the behavioral health campus. I'm sorry. The other is it or?
What we call the mental health crisis center and recovery campus, which desperately needs a better name, is the behavioral health center. It's all one and the same.
All right. This is a little bit related to an earlier question about the schools. Will you increase the RAP program funding in all USD 497 schools if the ballot question passes?
No, the USD 497, in all middle schools and high schools already have RAP counselors funded both by the county and the city now. The city jumped in a while back. What has happened throughout the county, though, Eudora and Baldwin school systems used to have RAP counselors, but they were grant funded and so temporary. When the grant funding ran out, so did the counselors. So both of those systems very much want to get their RAP counselors back in both middle school and high schools, and that is what we hope to do. And we also hope to be able to provide that for the Lecompton kids as well, who have not had that service yet.
Okay. We actually have done a pretty good job of getting through questions. I hope we've covered the gamut. Let's do a couple more, and then we can give you maybe 5 minutes to kind of wrap up if you feel like there's anything we've missed that's important. What type of studies were done to determine what the jail needs are?
Really, as far as we've brought in, there's about a full page of experts that we've utilized over time related to different areas. The behavioral health court, our Assess, Identify, Divert program. We usually focused on selecting individuals who are experts in that particular area. As far as the jail needs, we contracted with Dr. Alan Beck to come up with a future projection of what our population numbers would be after figuring out the impact of our programs on reducing that population. So basically, we currently have 186 beds. We're asking for an additional 178 with the intent on that lasting 20 years. So if that answered the question.
Okay. This might be one that Gary could handle. Many former inmates, recent, have told me that the Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous volunteers show up sometimes, and it's hit and miss since it's just volunteers. Isn't it disingenuous to list those as jail programs for inmates?
No, I don't believe so. I'm not aware of that being a problem. Actually, they show up between the groups as a team and then separate to go to the different housing units. There may have been times that we couldn't accommodate the program because of something going on in the facility, but I will definitely look into the issue. I have not been advised in any way, shape, or form that they haven't been regularly attending. So.
Okay. And one more question, and then we'll give you a couple minutes to wrap up if you think there's anything we've missed. Is there inaccurate information about Proposition 1 circulating that you would like to correct?
Well, certainly it's frustrating to see numbers thrown around that don't accurately reflect the numbers that the county has been working on for years. For instance, this is not a $166 million jail expansion or a $200 million jail expansion. This is a $44 million jail expansion. That is the cost of the construction project. So we're not talking, when we talk about this jail, of we need to try and use the same numbers so as not to confuse people. So it's a $44 million jail expansion. And also, I think the idea that that this is about mass incarceration, that we would not add 1 square inch to the county jail because of mass incarceration. I think everyone understands that mass incarceration in our federal prison system and our state prison system is a terrible problem and needs to be addressed on all sorts of levels and in all sorts of ways. But here in Douglas County, we don't have mass incarceration. In fact, we have one of the lowest incarceration rates, not just in the state, but in the nation. And so to say there's mass incarceration here and to hold the expansion of the jail facility hostage to what is actually a national agenda is, I think, both counterproductive and comes at the cost of people who desperately need better space, more humane environment, And, and so those are some of the things that need to be cleared up. To say that we don't have any programming or haven't tried hard enough to empty out our jail, the fact of the matter is that we are nationally recognized for some of those programs now, and some of them are old and some of them are new. But every day we can count about 150 folks who are out in our community safely who would otherwise be sitting in our jail, but for the programs the county commission got going just a few years ago. So it's not true that we have people in the jail now who were caught with a little weed in their pocket or who have unpaid parking fines. It's not true that people can't get out of jail because they can't pay their cash bond. We don't do cash bond anymore in the municipal court. And on the district court side, we have programs that get people out for no money. And in fact, the county pays for any services required, like ankle bracelets or supervision. So we're working as hard as we can to get everyone that the law will allow and the judges will allow to get safely out of jail. I'll leave it at that. Gary, do you want to say anything?
Thought you did a great job.
Can that be your closing remark then, or do you have anything else you'd like to hit on?
No.
Okay, very good. Just as a reminder, the mail ballots will go out this week and will be due back May 15th. Is that right?
They have to be in by noon on May 15th, either by mailing in or you can walk them in to the county clerk's office.
Okay, great. Thank you. We want to thank you for being here, and certainly our audience for being here, and the city for letting us use this space, and especially Kurt Henning, who is our technical person here who makes all this possible. This has been broadcast on the city's Channel 5 channel, and it will be available in case you'd like to refer any friends to it on the city's YouTube channel. And I think with that, we can come to a close. Thank you very much.